Okay, so round four, I'm playing as Ranjan Day, and I have the black pieces. So we get e4, c5, c6, Caro Kann, an advanced variation. Bishop f5, knight f3, e6, bishop e2. This is just the main line, knight e7, castles. And now here, this move a5, which I had prepared as sort of a little bit of a sideline in the Caro-Kann against this sort of more mainline theory. Uh, it has some points to it. I have, I've looked at in this position the move a4. I've looked at knight d2, looked at like rook e1. Um, in this game though, bishop e3, and I had not seen this move ever. It's not really one of the main moves. I don't think it's been played too much. We can just take a look actually just to see. Yeah, bishop e3 has never been played, so this is uh novelty, I guess, or actually no, more positions. Bishop e3 9 games. Okay, so this is a move that has been played in 9 games. The players with white are not particularly high rated, so anyway, I would not say that this is a move that you would need to look at in the opening, but nonetheless, it is a move that was played in this game. So I play a4 because the point of a5, if not a4 as the response, is to play a5, a4, and just gain space on the queen side. So it felt like this would be the right time to do it. Knight d2, and now I was thinking, okay, I'll just play a3. I mean, the pawn gains the maximum amount of space on a3, so it felt like I should do this. Um, and it turns out that this is the correct response. B3, and then here I thought for a while because it felt like bishop b4 was the right move to play. I had this gut feeling that I should play bishop b4, but I couldn't figure out what to do if he played the move knight b1. With the idea of going like c3 or even c4, it puts pressure on a3. And I thought, at least, that if I just developed naturally, like in that position, knight e7, like bishop b4, knight b1, if knight e7, I was looking at, okay, he'll play c3. I'll need to either take on b1 or drop the bishop back. And if I put my knight on e7, there's no square to drop the bishop back to. And if I don't play knight e7, still c3, and the e7 square is not where I want the bishop because it's where I want the knight. And I thought, if I go bishop a5, then knight takes a3 is an issue because I'm cutting off communication with the rook. This was the mistake in my plan, which I didn't understand, is that if c3 bishop a5 there, uh, we're not, so here, if knight b1, actually in this position I was looking at, not c3, because then I take the knight and then take on, well, I guess I could play bishop a5 if c3, but my main line actually went queen c1. Queen c1, I was thinking, if I play like knight e7, then c3, bishop a5, he'll take on a3, but if takes on a3, let's just plug this in. So yeah, if I play like knight e7, queen c1, and then the threat is to play c3, bishop a5, and what I missed is that you can't take this because of bishop c3, and this is just positionally very, very good for black. I'm winning, I guess, the knight in this position. And in the other line in the game, like this position, bishop a5. Now, if you play, like some some move, queen c1, um, yeah, I can just castle and sack this pawn. So um, this was sort of hard for me to figure out in the game. So I spent a very long time here trying to make bishop b4 work. Eventually, I just was like, no, it has to be the right move. Like, I have to play bishop b4. I play it, knight b1 comes instantly, because also he might not play knight b1, but okay, it feels like the right move, so he plays knight b1. And now I just need to play like f6. And f6, the reason I didn't want to do these sorts of things, as I was just saying, is c3, bishop a5. I thought I was hanging this pawn, but here, knight takes a3, bishop takes c3. Uh, this was just missed. So in the game, I had determined that okay, I just need to I need to be able to meet c3 with bishop takes b1. Then he'll have to take on b4 to not hang the pawn on c3, and um, and then I'll be able to drop the bishop back. So I want to drop the bishop back not to g6 or f5, but to h7. So I play the move h6, if that makes sense. So, which I guess maybe it doesn't make that much sense. I think it makes some sense. It's just not the right thing to do. So in the game, c3, I take on b1, he takes on b4, bishop drops back to h7, and I realized that I thought that this structure would be sort of like favorable for me because now the d4 pawn is could become a target eventually. If I can win this pawn, I'll be able to play c5 and sort of crack up, break up the center. But the pawn on b4 is really difficult uh, to hit. It can always just be defended by bishop d2 or similar. And also b5 is potentially a good move for white if takes and pawn takes, then the c6 pawn is a weakness. So in this position, I just played well, first is his turn. So okay, so he plays b5, which I thought was like it's a good move. He's I also thought it was possible that he could just leave the b pawn there and maybe try to gang up on the a pawn with like knight e1, knight c2, and bishop c1. But I think if the knight goes to c2, I'll just be able to chop it off. So I don't think that this is actually a very ambitious way of playing. b5 felt good, knight e7, but then this move b takes c6, which the engine actually is suggesting. I just didn't feel like it was the most critical way to play because after takes, I get to take with my knight, and I've sort of fixed all my problems, right? Like now the a pawn is able to be defended on the diagonal, which is a good thing. My knight is pressuring here. It's has access to the b4 square. The bishop is covering these squares very well as well, so maybe they can work with the knight. I'll be able to castle next turn. I don't have any pawn on the c file that is a target, so I was feeling pretty comfortable um, with this. Bishop d3, yeah. So it felt like the bishop at some point needs to go to this diagonal. Right now, didn't feel unnatural to me. It felt like it was fine. Um, I played an interesting, weird response to it. I should just take it and castle. Instead, I castle first, which is just sort of weird because that just gives White more flexibility with how he wants to respond. Because now after takes here, like White can just get the same position that he would have had if I had played bishop takes d3 with queen d3, or he can do something else. So it sort of gives White more options. Uh, in this game, though, queen d3, king g8 was played, so it's basically as if I had just taken on d3 and castled. Um, Now knight e1, which it's going to c2, where it will put pressure on a3. So that felt pretty good for him. I thought that was a good move. Now I develop my queen. My development is now completed. I have more coverage of the b4 square in case of knight c2, which actually knight c2 doesn't happen yet. But if knight c2, I have like knight b4 ideas. Instead f4. And now, yeah, I could play knight b4. I just thought that I was a little bit nervous about how these kingside attacks work out for white. The ability to like lift rooks. Um, it's just very scary. So I thought that if I can shut it down with f5, I should. So I do that. Because if en passant, then I'll be able to take with a knight. I'll have access to the e4 square. This just felt like, and if not takes, then it's very solid in the center. The e6 pawn is very difficult to target with any piece, and also very easy to defend. So this sort of just slows down any kingside attacks. White is definitely stronger on the king side because of this wedge pawn on e5. Meanwhile, the queen side, I'm stronger, so I shut down play in the center slash king side, and now I have more room to play on the queen side. Knight c2, knight b4, I just trade off this knight before it pressures a3 pawn too much. And after bishop d2, I just play queen b6 back. So this is all pretty good. Rook c1, and now here is I would say this is probably one of the more critical moments of the game where you have to make a decision. Either you can play rook c8 and challenge the file, um, or you can play knight b8. The reason you'd want to play knight b8 and not rook c8 is uh, if you, well, actually, okay, so rook a c8, I guess, maybe is superior to both of these options. I was only looking at rook f c8 because the a rook I thought was already doing a good job here. But really, the reason I didn't want to play rook f c8 is because then, if white just leaves the tension in the position, I can't play knight b8 anymore because it hangs my rook on c8, and my knight really wants to go to b8 to c6. So maybe for that reason, I should play rook a c8, and then if the pawn is ever attacked by something, I'll be able to defend it with like maybe queen a7. But I didn't want to allow queen b5. So I played knight b8. Um, and the move rook c5 was played, which I, to be honest, didn't really really think about. I didn't really. I mean, I was of course looking at like doubling rooks, but I was mostly looking at doubling rooks through c2, rook on c5. It didn't. I didn't really understand the difference, but it's a more active square. It covers the a5 square again. It's protected by a pawn. It sort of blocks the communication between the queen and this pinned pawn diagonal. Um, so it makes a lot of sense. I should really be looking at it, but okay, rook c5 comes. Now, I thought on knight a6, I would be like, asking for like rook b5 or queen b5. I thought I didn't really want to allow either of those moves, so I just put the knight on c6 where it was planning to go. And I was thinking, okay, yes, you get your rooks doubled on the c file, but they're just running into my knight. And as long as I don't allow b4, b5 to occur, then then your rooks on the c file don't really matter. I play queen a6. I was thinking that he should keep the queens on in this position with like queen e3, which is the top move. I still thought that I was, now I've at least won over this light square diagonal. The queen is more active on a6 than it was on b6. But it's kind of hard for me to figure out what my next moves are going to be. White might try to play like g4, generate some sort of play on the king side. If white can orchestrate like b4, b5, that would be something to worry about. Right now, there is pressure on the d4 pawn, so I thought that queen e3 was best, but instead takes, and now I have this pressure on d4. I'm still, I'm because of the pressure, I'm stopping b4, and it's going to be really difficult without b4 to dislodge the knight and make use of the rooks. So I was feeling pretty good here, actually. Bishop c3, defending the pawn. The machine wants king f2, and I guess if I take on d4, there's rook c7 and the activity, especially just given that my b pawn is attacked right now, the activity is just too much to allow. So I guess I'm not really attacking this pawn as much as I thought I was. Um, but for this reason, bishop c3 is an inaccuracy because you're defending against a threat that doesn't exist. Um, Rook f8. My idea with this move is to play rook b6 without allowing any bishop a5s or any such moves. King f2. I play rook b6 now to really eliminate b4 as a possibility. Maybe at some point I want to play knight b4, but not right now because that allows the rook to come in. King e3, king f7. Now the bishop is free to go back to d2. And in this position, I realized that if I want to try to, play the position uh, for a win or even just to keep it alive, I guess, I need to start playing on the other side of the board too. I've sort of maximized my pieces on the queen side. So I play g5. And in this position, my opponent plays a very bad move, and I knew it was a bad move in the game. Taking on g5 is really not what white should be doing because um, now I have these pawns here that are very mobile and also a target on h2 and also a square on h4 to lift and come in, put more pressure on the d4 pawn. So this was really not how white should have continued. I play so king d3, king g6, and now h3. My opponent hovered his hand over the g pawn in this position, and g3 or g4, even worse. Like both of these moves should be basically lost. Then he takes his hand back and reconsiders, and then h3, which is a much better move. I play rook h8, threatening rook h4. In this position, I actually thought that I was going to play rook h4 by force, but bishop e1 comes. And now I think I go wrong a little bit. I should just play like f4, king f5, threaten to be able to come in with the king. Also, g4 is still a move. The reason I played what I played in the game, king h5, is because I wanted to play g4 and take with the king. I can still do that with my king on f5 once I play f4. So king h5, bishop a5, and now, yeah, so here's the thing. I don't have much time at this point. And um, obviously I look at taking it, rook takes, and, I see that my a pawn is hanging. I see that my king is going to enter. I'm going to get some counterplay. But it just felt like, okay, I'll just play rook a6, he'll go back, and we can just sort of, either repeat at least, or um, if not repeat, like I'll be able to get closer to the time control and figure it out. So I play rook a6, which this is probably the moment where I had to win. I mean, I see now that I have a win, but like this is probably the only moment in the game where I have like a real win, and rook a6 throws that away. So, because here it's like I'm better, but I'm probably not winning. I can press this, and then here it's sort of like the same. So this is the miss, rook a6. After bishop d2, I play g4. Uh, b4 is very well timed. I didn't see this move. I really should, because my rook on b6, the whole point of it was to prevent b4, and now I've just moved it away. So this is a very well timed move. Now I have to be really careful not to lose. If I go back to b6, then b5 traps my rook on b6. The knight will move, and then bishop a5 will trap my rook. So rook has to go to a4, b5, and now I have two moves that I can really consider. I can either consider knight b4 check, or I can consider rook takes d4. Knight moving somewhere else doesn't really make that much sense. So knight b4, I thought he could just take, and I wasn't sure if that rook in game was really that much better for me. I mean, I saw that I was still pressuring some of the pawns. I saw that I could maybe play rook b2, but I thought just rook c2 there, and yeah, I'm gonna have counterplay on the king side, but I wanted more than that, and I saw this line where I can play rook takes d4, king has to go to c3, and then I could play rook takes d2, exchange sacrifice, and then after king takes, then I take on e5 with the knight, and my knight's going to have access to the c4 square, where it will be able to protect the a3 pawn, the pawn on b6, and it's protected there. So I saw that and I was like, I feel like I can actually probably press that position more than the rook in game, which is probably a terrible idea to think, because yeah, I do get two pawns for the exchange, but I just saw that the knight is sort of like on a protected square, and it's protecting the pawns, but the pawn chain itself is able to be ganged up on, and the knight can't protect it without pushing it, and then the d pawn is weak, and I can't protect that, and then if that falls, then the whole thing falls, and white is up in exchange. So um yeah, maybe I have enough compensation for a draw, but like I'm like, I sort of realized, so in this position, takes, takes. Also in this position, there's the possible, yeah, it says rook takes d2 is brilliant. It's not really that brilliant. It's the only move that doesn't you know lose a piece. So rook takes d2. I was in this position, so this is move 40. I was a little bit worried about b takes c6. I hadn't fully calculated that, but I thought that I would just be able to play like rook takes a2. If you take on b7, I'll have rook b2, and if you play c7, I'll have rook c8. So uh, I didn't fully calculate it, but it felt like I was going to be able to stop the pawn. King takes d2, knight takes e5, throws in taking on g4, king takes g4, and then rook e1, and this is sort of like the end of the combination with rook takes d4. So now we arrive at this position, and I sort of realize after rook e1, like, I'm not in time to defend the e-pawn with my king. Like, yeah, okay, I play check, king moves. Now I need to use my rook to defend the pawn. Uh, and then, rook c7 could come, taking on b7. So this is really, and rook e8 is already like a problem to rook takes d5. So this is a problem. I've realized, like, if my pawn was on f4 and I could play, uh, if I could play like king f5, then maybe I'm pressing. I'm actually a little bit curious about that. We can take a look after. Actually, let's see if I can just triangulate the position. I just want to look at it. So if I play like f5, king here, 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 here. Now if it's my turn, yeah. So now if I play king f5, now this position I can actually press, right? Because the king is protecting the e pawn, which means the rook is fully mobile, and I'm going to be able to play b6. The knight is actually safe on this square, protecting all the pawns, not allowing counterplay. Black is doing well here. This is what I was hoping for, right? Like, this is what I wanted to have happen when I sacrificed rook takes d4, rook takes d2. But this just doesn't happen in the game because I don't have access to the f5 square for my king. If I had just played f4 earlier, which felt like a very natural move, you can see how this would have been much better. So in the end, I play knight d6, which threatens a fork. The king just comes to d4. And I sort of realized that I am running into some issues. I play rook h6 and offer a draw, which my opponent accepts. I was really unsure what to play after b6. The move b6 was really scary to me because it feels like I'm going to, like, the king is going to be able to enter. Rook c7 is pressuring the b7 pawn. I can't easily attack b6 without losing something. So I was very scared. The machine shows that king g5 is still holding, but other moves, like, that's the only move. Otherwise, white is already significantly better. I think that probably in the game, if my opponent had declined the draw and played b6, I would have a very difficult time holding this. Obviously, it's a 3-result game. Anything can happen, really. But it was very scary, and I was very relieved that the draw was accepted at this time. So we make a draw. Uh, we're on, what is it, one out of 4, which is pretty terrible. We had the two tough losses, and then now 2 draws where we had, I don't know, better position, borderline winning position at multiple moments, but couldn't convert them. And so now, yeah, they just became draws. So still haven't won a game in this tournament, and 1 round to go. So stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you in that one.